In course 10, we are going to make these super adorable cell phone pockets. And all they really serve for is holding your cell phone. So I've designed for you an owl pattern and a puppy pattern. And they're mainly made out of felt with button for eyes if you choose. And just one piece of fabric here. Two, but you know what I mean, one small piece. And here, again, for the owl, I'm asking you to get a piece of lace or ruffle with one piece of fabric, and the rest is all felt. So like I always tell you, get that pattern and let's get going. Puppy pocket accessory. So here I have laid out everything that you're going to need to create it. I have my cutout pattern pieces, straight pins, coordinating threads, 2 buttons for the pupil, but if you want to use felt, you totally can, because I gave you the pattern for that. It's your choice. Shears, my pieces of scrap felt, which I always tell you I save, a larger piece of felt, and then cotton fabric. Just a small piece of it, which the cotton fabric we're going to use for the spot and the mouth detail. But of course, if you don't want to use the cotton fabric or you don't have it or whatever situation you're in, you can cut out the spot detail and the mouth here, the lower mouth, you can cut that out of just regular felt. It's your choice. Remember, you're the designer here and you're going to choose the look of your accessory. Next step is to cut out all of my pieces out of my small piece of fabric and felt. So I am going to read all of the pattern pieces and follow what it's telling me. So for example, the eye, I need 2. So I will fold it, pin it down, and cut out 2. And so forth for all the rest of the pieces. I'm going to give it a brown nose. And this is the part where you're going to be making all sorts of decisions, design decisions, what colors, which pattern fabrics, if you choose to use fabrics, and so on. So you go on and continue as I do the same here and cut out all of my pieces. For my lower face pattern piece and spot, I've decided I want to trace it instead of cutting around the pattern. So I am pinning it to the wrong side of the fabric. And I'm going to trace with my pencil. Actually, it should be straight. So my spots, my polka dots, I should say, are straight as well on the final product. You don't need a perfect marking. You just need something you can see when you're cutting out. And if you press hard with the sharp pencil, you'll notice that the fabric pulls and it's not the best. Press lightly and score, as I did there. Okay, then I remove and use my shears to cut this out. All of my pieces cut out here and I just placed them. I didn't sew them yet in place, but I used the key that I provided for you on the pattern to do this. Remember, the ears are going to be sticking out and flapping out. So if you've already made the puppy pillow, you're going to know not to sew the ear on by mistake. That comes after, and we're going to sew the ear on this way, and then we put the back of the pocket over it and we sew. So leave the ears out for now and make sure you like the look of your puppy face and the way it's coming out. And remember, the eyes can change the personality of this puppy. I mean, you can make him wacky, all right, if you want. It's kind of cute to make him wacky. It's totally up to you. So one thing I want you to remember is that fabric, we cut it on the edge here, is going to fray. So before we start sewing this in place, we have to actually press this cotton edge fabric down with the iron, before we actually sew it down, because if not, if we don't do that, eventually the fabric will start fraying. We will sew around here, and then you're going to see the little fibers of the fabric sticking out. If you don't mind that, okay, and you think it'll add character to the puppy pocket, then you can leave it. But I think I mind that, and I don't want to see that. So let's go over to my iron, and I will show you how to do this. Okay, now that we are at my ironing mat, I'm going to show you how to iron these so that we flip the edge over and it won't fray on our puppy pocket. That is, again, a tongue twister for me. Our puppy pocket accessory. All right, so for the lower mouthpiece, we just have to fold over this edge. These edges here are going to get caught into the puppy pocket accessory when we flip it right side out, so there's no need to do anything there. So what I'm going to do is turn this over, and as it's turned over, being really careful not to burn myself, I'm going to put the iron on it and press. I have my iron set on the steam setting, so see how steam is coming out, and it is pressing down the edges of my curve. Now, if you find this too challenging, it is totally fine. You can cut this piece out as well as the spot. You can cut it out of felt so that you don't have to go through this. But what I say is a little bit of challenge is always a good thing. Don't leave this on too long. You don't want to scorch your fabric. And look at how that looks. Nice and clean. There will be no fraying. Now for the spot, all we want to do is turn over this top edge and the curve. This will get caught in the pocket on the inside when we flip it, so there's no need to do this edge. So this one is a little bit more, it requires a little bit more work, or just being a bit more cautious with detail because we have curves. And if you really love the spot and you want it in fabric and you find this curve a little too difficult to flip over and iron, then what you can do is you could change the shape of this curve. Maybe you can just make it one rounded, just like this, like one rounded edge, instead of these two lump and bumps that I have here, these lumps, these bumps, these curves, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so I'm going to take my time to easily do this as well. Notice how I flipped over the edge. There's no super easy DIY for this. It's just being super careful and taking your time. Notice how I'm turning it in and turning it in. Once you have a handle on it, it works pretty fast. It just kind of goes, I meant to say, just goes smoothly. And I'm going to give it a quick second there so it doesn't burn. Not bad, right? I'm going to give it an extra shot of steam. And I have turned over my spot. Step is to place and pin down your lower mouth and your spot onto the front of the pocket. So, of course, you can refer to this. And again, change it up. If you need to make these out of felt, you can. If whatever it is, you can change it up. Maybe you change this curve here so it's one. It's totally up to you. And remember, this side here is flipped over because this is where we slide our phone in, and we don't want that to fray. But if you like the look, you can totally go for it. And now I'm going to take my double threaded needle, and I'm going to begin, always from the back, to sew down this lower mouth using 5 to 6 stitches per inch. For this particular project, I would not draw your guideline because it is going to be on the outside and you're going to see it. If you really need a guideline, I suggest you buy a chalk marking pencil specifically made for sewing so that you can rub that chalk away when you're done if you really need the line. But I think you're going to be okay by now. Notice how I'm staying very close to the edge, and I'm taking my time with this one. I'm not doing the quicker method of sewing because this fabric, for some strange reason, is a little bit stiffer this felt. It's a little bit stiffer than regular felt, and I just had a feeling that I wouldn't be able to sew efficiently the other way. Anyway, I'm going to continue sewing. Make sure the flap stays in. I'm going to continue sewing 5 or 6 stitches per inch around the lower mouth and around the spot. So here's a little trick when beginning to sew the spot detail on. Since this is the top of your pocket and you can easily see this side, you probably don't want to show the knot, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to start, instead of on the back, you're going to start your stitch on the back of the actual spot. You're going to hide and tuck that all in, right? Let me get closer so I can see. Okay, and now I'm going to start sewing. This way, you don't see the knot. Now, if you don't have a problem with the fact that you see the knot when you slip your phone in, that's totally fine. You do not have to do it this way. Just a little trick if you like to see things clean and finished. My lower mouth and spot detail are sewn in place using 5 or 6 stitches per inch, and I'm going to place now my eye details and my nose in place. And again, you can look at the key if you need help with where exactly they're being placed. You can decide if the eyes come over the nose or if the nose comes over the eyes, or maybe you can separate the eyes a little bit more, pull them out to the sides. It's up to you. Remember to make sure that your details, your felt details, are cut really neatly at this point. And I've decided to coordinate the thread. So I'm going to use white for sewing on the eyes and brown, dark brown, for sewing on the nose. So I'm going to pin these in place with my straight pins, and I'm going to get started sewing these details on. Button eyes. I've already attached one and sewn it on. And in the event that you haven't watched my previous classes on how to do it, I will do this one for you here. So the beauty of this video is that you can just keep playing it over and over and stopping, and just however you need. Stop the video when you need, okay? So I went in from the back, all right, because you always want the knot on the back, and you're just going to simply go through the holes. Now you can decide if you want to go straight or sideways or X. I, for some reason, like making an X when I'm sewing a button. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hold it in place as to where I want it. And I'm going to go diagonal, straight to the back. And then I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to trace each hole twice. So it's like making an X twice. If you just do it once, it's totally fine. I just assumed, why not? Just in case you become a little rough with this pocket. You saw there I was struggling to get it through. If that happens, don't worry. Just come out through the end, through the back, and wrap it around. Okay, here we go. I'm ending off behind the button, right? So check it out. Behind the button, I do a little end off, right? Stick the needle through the loop, pull, and you are good. Trim it so it's short and you don't see that, okay? So let's trim it even shorter. My apologies, I'm back here in the video. All right, here we go. The button eyes are in place. So now what you want to do is you want to attach the ears and the back of the pillow. Did I just say pillow? I meant pocket. I've been making so many pillows. I'm dreaming of pillows. So the ears, remember, don't put it this way. Don't put them this way because it will be a mistake. You want them to flap out and stick out. Okay, so we're going to place the ears this way. So if you see here, a little bit down from the edge, I'm going to place one here. Because when you open it up, you want them to flap out and stick out. If you have them this way, and if you've already made the puppy pillow, you'll know this. If you have them this way, when you turn the pillow right side out, they are going to end up on the inside of the pocket. That doesn't help us. All right, that doesn't give this puppy its ears that it needs. Okay, so I'm going to place this here. and I'm going to pin it down. I believe one pin is more than enough. You can add a second one if you'd like. And then at the same level on the opposite side, I'm going to place the other one. You can place one lower and higher if you want to make a sort of silly or goofy looking puppy. That's totally fine too. So I'm going to have these here placed just like this, right? And I'm going to take the back of the pocket and I'm going to match it. And I'm going to pin in place, everything in place. So keeping it together, I'm going to add a few pins. The beauty of pins, it keeps everything we need together as we sew, so we have a really nice looking project. So if you notice, I was pushing and I was struggling. That is like a layer of 3 layers of felt and 1 of my fabric spot. It's normal if you can't get it through all the way and you need a little bit more force. So now I'm going to peek and know that this is my top, right? Because I see my spot in my ears. So knowing that this is my top, I have to now think to myself, I'm going to sew from here. I'm going to do a really good end off. Even before I start sewing, I'm going to do a few extra stitches there for ending off. Okay, even though I'm starting, and I'm going to sew all the way down. I'm going to make a turn, then I'm going to come up, and again, I'm going to do about 3 end offs there, just to keep it nice and strong. Okay, 5 to 6 stitches per inch. Here we go. I have sewn around my pocket. I'm going to clip the corners because if you remember from the simple pillows we made, you want to clip those corners so when you flip it around, it doesn't get, the corners come out nice and square and there's not an extra fabric in there that doesn't make the corners turn well. So I'm going to stick my hand in there and take out the pin. And I mentioned before that this felt is really interesting because I ordered it on Amazon without being obviously in the store and feeling it actually and touching it. It's a bit stiffer and more interesting, I will say. So maybe this will be a positive thing for my pocket pillow. And the most exciting part of all, I'm going to use my point turner. You don't have to poke out the corners. First my fingers and then my point turner. And I have to say, this is looking so cute. Now be careful if you have a point turner or you're using your chopstick like I have here. Okay, you could even use that to poke out your corners. Be careful because the felt, the fibers in the felt aren't weaved as closely as the fibers in the cotton, and you could easily poke through. So I think this is so adorable. Although it's not done because I want to add the mouth. This is super, super cute. Now I decided to add the mouth detailing after, and you could have done it on the front. It possibly is easier for you to do before you put the back of the pillow on, but either way you could decide. So when you have all the details sewn onto the front, what you could do is you could draw in the mouth just like I'm drawing in now, and it's really freehand. Okay, you can make it longer, shorter, however you want. I'm just going to draw it in like that, and I'm going to do my embroidering now. So if you are taking these courses in order, you already know how to embroider due to the wonderful soccer ball, which you really embroidered a lot there. But here, it's easy to embroider here as well, because here's the thing. You're not going through the actual felt. When you're embroidering, you're just going to go through the cotton, so it's easy to do it here as well as a finishing detail. But again, you can do this way before you put the back of this pocket on. So I made a double knot, and I'm going to trim the very end of any tail that is on there. And my embroidery floss, I only used 3 threads. So I took it apart. I took apart the original, and I'm only using, there's 6 strings there or 6 threads there. I'm only using 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start all the way under the nose so I can hide my knot. If you're really good with the movement of just checking if it stayed still, if you're really good with moving and really using this needle, you can actually start from the inside of the pocket just once. We can trim that after and hide that, and I'll show you how to do it. So here's what you're going to do. You are going to embroider and draw, just like I showed you if you've done already, my soccer ball pillow. Look at me. I'm talking and I'm going the wrong way. I'm that person who cannot chew, as you've probably noticed already, chew gum and walk in a straight line without tripping over her own 2 feet. That's me. Okay, and now I'm tracing. And again, I'll show you how to get rid of that knot. I'm tracing to form a nice line. And this is really actually simple to pull this all through. So if you're concerned that you don't want to struggle, thinking you may struggle, what you do is you should start this before you sew everything together. But I don't think it's a struggle. That's why I do it this way. Can't access the inside of the pocket, it is okay to do one end off stitch right here at the end. I believe it looks clean and you can't really see it. The only trick is, see how clean that looks? It looks totally fine. The only trick is you have to cut it super close to that knot without cutting the knot. Okay, I mean, I think that looks fine. Okay, so let's continue with the rest. I'm going to create my magic knot and continue. In case you did not make my soccer ball pattern, let me walk you through how to embroider. So I'm going to make a stitch right here. I'm going to go under and I'm going to follow the line. The trick is to really stay on the line. And then before moving on, you're going to close up this gap. And by doing that, I stick the point, being really careful, into where this hole here is formed. It's really not a hole, but this point here. And then as your needle comes through, you have to guide it. This is all about hand-eye coordination. You have to guide it onto the line because you really want to trace the line. Now I go back because I need to close up that hole, right? Or that gap. And I go back. And when my needle comes out, I make sure it lands on my guideline. Okay, this does take concentration and good hand-eye coordination. And that's what you're doing here. You're learning all these skills and continuing. So whenever you're on a curve, you want to make sure to not make such large stitches, because if they're really large, the curve doesn't really curve so nicely. And as you're doing this, make sure you don't grab the back of the pocket, so that when you slip your phone in, you're like, hey, what the heck's going on? Why can't I get my phone in here? Well, you kind of sewed the back down. Don't do that. Be careful. Okay? And now I want to show you how I end off again. Let me just see if I have a little bit. I think I do have a little bit more to go there. I'm going to show you how I end off and how we can hide that little knot in there. I'm going to make one last stitch right here. Okay, one last stitch. I'm just trying to come out in that same spot so you don't see anything. And again, I'm going to go into the last stitch. I mean, if you can fit your hand on the inside of the pillow and finish it off in the pillow, do it. Last stitch. And what you can do is you can even bring this in, just like we do the magic end off on the pillow. You can bring this in and pull it out and cut the back so you don't see the knot. But I mean, it really doesn't bother me if there's a few pieces of strings for this particular detail. So once this is cut off super close, and you could clean up any extra strings you have from the other one, you could finish this off after. Okay, I'm going to take a straight pin. This is a really thick one. I think it's really used for floral purposes. And I am going to stick that knot under the stitches of my nose. There's always a trick for everything. Remember that, okay? Just, you're gonna have to do it a few times, because what you're doing is you're moving the fibers of the cotton, right? And you're stuffing this in. Okay, so this fabulous pocket is ready for a cell phone. Love this. Love it. Let's get started with this owl cell phone pocket accessory. I have everything I'm going to need here to get started and basically finish. I have my straight pins, my cutout pattern pieces, my shears, my coordinating threads, and don't ever worry if your threads don't coordinate perfectly. It's totally fine. I would still continue a project. My sewing needle, my scraps of felt, and I always tell you I save my scraps. Here's why. A piece of ribbon or trim, and my piece of coordinating, because I like when things coordinate, fabric. So what we're going to do now is look at our pattern pieces, and just like the puppy pillow, we are going to cut out exactly what the pattern pieces tell us. So you're going to need a front and back of your pocket, and you'll notice that the front and back are different this time, and you're cutting those out of felt. So I've decided to use a dark green. I'm going to pin these down and cut them out, and I'm going to follow the same directions for the rest of everything here. So I'll get started, and you will too on your end. Remember, for your pieces that require two, you can always fold your felt and fabric and pin it down and actually cut it once to get two in one shot. But that's your call if you want to do it that way. And continue with all the rest of these pieces, and I will see you when you're all done with them. When it comes to sewing these really tiny pieces, such as the nose here, what I suggest you do is you actually either trace it, remember never a marker or a pen, or just hold it in place. If you make sure not to move the paper pattern at all, you'll be okay with just holding it, because it can get a little odd having that long pin in there and the piece is much, much smaller and shorter than the pin. So again, make sure you don't move that paper piece, and I think you're going to be okay. Just like I have here. So I have all my pieces cut out, and I'm going to use the key from my pattern to lay it out and pin it down and start sewing. So I use this pattern right here to inspire me for the rest of my choices for my owl. So sometimes that happens. I saw it and I thought, oh, I like this. And then I was able to choose my green and my maroon, etc. So according to this key, I'm going to follow along. And this time, we don't have to do any ironing here. So if you already made the puppy pocket pillow, that tongue twister, you'll know what I mean. And I'm going to place the eyes just like it shows me. And the pupils. This time I decided not to use a, got stuck on me, not to use a buttons. I'm going to just use felt. And now you can use ribbon, you can use ruffle, you can use whatever it is that you can get your hands on. There's all different types. There's ribbon like this. There's even rick-racking. If you want, you can use some rick-racking. But I think for mine, this one coordinates well. So I'm going to pin that down, and then I'm going to put the nose over it. So obviously you see how it turns, right? Oh, it's on the right side. So I'm going to have to pin it down so that it doesn't make that curve, and then I can pin everything in place. I think I made really nice choices here. So I'm going to pin it all in place, and then I'm going to start sewing. And what's great about this is I don't have to sew down this fabric here, because when you put the back on, you're sewing it all in place anyway. So there's no need to waste time doing that. So let's pin this guy together, or girl. If you want to cheat and use fabric glue for the eyes, I will not tell, but I don't want to cheat. I want to leave it and actually sew it with black thread. But you can. Some of my students always ask for glue at the end. And if they've done a really, really good job, I let them have the glue. Meaning if they've done a really good job with the other parts, I let them have the glue. Okay. And these I'm going to sew in after. So I'm going to move them out of the way so they don't fall off as I'm holding this and stitching. As usual, you're going to sew all around the perimeter of these eyes that are attached. And you always start in the back, because you want your knot on the back. And I'm going to work my way around doing 5 to 6 stitches as best as I can, because this felt is thick, around the perimeter of the eyes. If you see green popping up here, it's because it's pulling some of the fibers of the felt through, but don't worry. Whatever color you have, if you see pulling it through, do not worry. Sometimes I back up if I feel that space is too large, because it's too thick. I back up, almost like as if you're embroidering. If you did that part already and skipped over to that course, I do that. And I'm going to work my way around the eyes. As you have about 2 or 3, I'd say more 3 inches left on your sewing needle, bring it to the back, bring the needle to the back and end off. Go through your last stitch, pull the needle until you have your loop. From this angle, it's hard for me to see. Put it through the loop, and then again, stick it through the loop, and you have ended off. Now I'm going to rethread my needle and continue sewing around. The ruffle on now, just simply by doing a running stitch across the top. That's all, nothing special. Making sure I keep up with my 5 or 6 stitches per inch. I may need a thimble for my finger here because I'm going through several layers of fabric. So I will put a thimble on. I feel that I need it, and I'm going to be able to push it through easier. Here we go. You may not need it, but my needle, some of them aren't so sharp on the end where the eye is, but this one is, and it kind of tends to dig into my finger, and that's not pleasant. Now that I have sewn on all the details of the front of my owl pocket, I'm going to attach the back. But before I do that, I need to add the wings. So if you have already made the puppy pillow or the puppy pocket, you'll know exactly how to do this. You're going to take one wing at a time, and you're going to place it right about here. Okay? And you're going to pin it down, almost like the owl is covering her eyes, like, ooh. Okay? And pin the other one at about the same level or same height from the top. And now what you're going to do is you're going to place the back right on top, matching the sides. Don't worry if you have anything sticking out. It's totally fine. Okay, I'm going to pin it in place. I'm going to flip it over here and pin this in place. Need a longer pin there. For some reason, I love working better with the longer pins. Maybe you may have, or maybe if you're learning, you may find the same to be true. So you are sandwiching. It's like you're making a sandwich here. You have your bread and all your meats and lettuce pieces in the center. Okay, you're sandwiching all this together. So now what you're going to do is you're going to sew right from here, not from the top of the ear, but right from here. You're going to sew down, turn, and up. And remember, the ends are going to be our pressure points. So just like when we did in the course of the pouch, that these take the most pressure when we turn it right side out, okay? And even when you're pulling your phone in and out. So make sure that you do a few extra end offs there so it's nice and strong. I have sewn around this pouch or pocket. Really, it's the same thing. I'm just going to trim off this so it doesn't add any bulk inside of my pocket. And I'm going to reach in there and not forget, because sometimes I forget and I actually get hurt because there's straight pins in there and it's not funny. I shouldn't be laughing. And I've pulled those out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this pocket right side out. And always the best part, to reveal what it looks like. Yay! So adorable. Again, I'm using my fingers first before I even use either the chopstick, the point turner, a dull scissor, or shear. And I'm going to poke out these corners, being careful that I don't create a hole and puncture through. Okay, and how adorable is this owl pocket? Super cute. Now what you can do is you can add a little more. You know, you can give it a bow up here. You can do whatever you want. You know what? Now that you know how to embroider, you can embroider some eyelashes in there. Actually, you know what? I think I need to do that. Let me embroider some eyelashes. I'm going to give myself some guidelines as to where I want to embroider these eyelashes. Maybe here. And I know I thought of it too late. I could have done it before, but it's totally fine. It'll work out. I don't want to draw too much on this white because it may show through. So I just may eye this one, meaning just do it randomly. So I'm going to actually try and stick the needle. Yeah, not bad. You can do this from the inside. And now I'm going to embroider this way. And I'm using the full embroidery floss. I decided not to cut it in half, meaning just 3, because I knew I could get through this. Oh yeah, you know what? I think this owl really needed these eyelashes. So now it's definitely a she, I believe. Okay, so I got one done, and here is a question I usually get from students. How do I do the other one? Do I end off? You know what? Leave it right there. Go back into that same hole and start your other one from the end. I'm actually going to extend the design of it down here. I'm going to pull. You'll notice that with the embroidering, you have to kind of play around with it too and move it around. And now I'm going to trace this other eyelash. Sometimes it's a little hard to pull it through and knots form. This is totally normal. You are doing nothing wrong. We're pulling thick floss through already thick felt, so it's totally normal. I'm going to go back into that point, bring it down to the eye. It's okay if I go through the eye. Totally fine. No one knows. It's all black. I'm going to pull and to fix it. And draw in this last line. And if I can flip this, I may end off on the inside. It was worth the struggle in the end because it's got these adorable eyelashes. I think I may have to play around with those a little, but it is cute. Now I'll do the other ones, and I'll end off right under the eye, or right on the eye. It's black on black, so you won't see the knot. So I won't even struggle with doing it from the inside. And now I'm going to do the other one. Just when I thought I was completely done with this, I decided to create a bow out of ribbon and put it right there. Because, I don't know, I just like it. I have to give it a bow. So I'm going to use the embroidery floss I have left, and what I'm going to do is just tack it on like this. You know, you can keep adding whatever else you want to this adorable pouch, because really it is an accessory, and why not give it more accessories just to make it super cute. I went around this bow twice, and that's about it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull because it's a little hard sometimes. It is embroidery floss. I'm going to end off in the back. Actually, you're going to see the knot there. Why don't we just end off right under the bow? Right here. Okay. I'm going to pull. And I'm going to loop it right there. I think that will really tack it on well. I know I only did it once, but I feel confident it will stay. I'm going to trim it close. And